ANMA Talks is an initiative for sharing knowledge between students, staff and management of the Nordic and Baltic Academies for Higher Music Education and anyone else interested. Welcome to ANMA Talks Artistic Citizenship Next Steps Towards World-Centered Education. This time live from the ANMA meeting 2023 in Finland.
I'm going to start off by just giving a small introduction of what this very broad title could be about, and then we'll see where the conversation goes from there. Unfortunately, due to time concerns, you won't have the possibility to ask questions to the panel here, but you have the coffee break coming afterwards. So you can run up, grab a panel member and ask your question when we're done. So I hope you can bear with that. The title is meant to lead up also to the keynote that we're having tomorrow, and I can tell you can look forward to that. I had the pleasure of talking to our keynote before this, and I will try to bridge the gap between today and tomorrow leading up to the keynote, which is called Student of the Future. So in this panel discussion, what we're going to do is that we will explore how artistic citizenship might be used as a stepping stone towards this concept of world-centered education. And what that might mean to students, but also to higher music education in general, now and in the future. So you see, an hour is pretty optimistic, but we'll try our best. So, we will start by you introducing yourselves. Henrik, would you like to start?
Yes. Yes.
And thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Camilla. My name is Henrik Sveidahl. I'm rector or principal at Musikkonservatorium, Rhythmic Music Conservatory in Copenhagen. I've been there actually as a rector since 2005. So I've been through some changes in music education and society as such. I don't know if that's important at all, but I just wanted to mention it.
Adrian.
Hi everybody, I'm Adrian Daly. I'm actually currently living in Los Angeles. I work at the Colburn School. I'm the provost there, the chief academic officer, pianist by training, and I grew up in Ireland, so not so far from here, but I do live. I've lived in America for about 30 years, so I'm here on an exchange trip that we organized with Sibelius Academy. So just the timing was such that I just happened to be here today. So I'm very happy to be part of this and to hear some good ideas from what's happening in Europe. Since America is quite far away, and often we don't hear what's going on in Europe, so it's very nice to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Siri Storheim. I'm from Norway, and I'm a pretty recent alumni of the Norwegian Academy of Music, where I did a bachelor's and a master's. Now I'm not a student or a teacher or a director. I'm a freelance musician and currently working, as Camilla mentioned, with ANMA Talks.
Hello, I'm Katja Thomson. I'm from here, Finland, from Sibelius Academy, where I work in the music education department as a lecturer and also work as a researcher currently in a project called Music Education, Professionalism and Eco-Politics.
Thank you so much. And it seems we're so lucky that we don't need microphones. So that was a reminder to us to speak up and really speak to the room.
Good point.
Let's make an agreement that if we forget, you just quietly raise your hand, and I will try to spot it and sign that we need to speak up again. Let's see how that works. Oh yeah, that one. That was a good one. Sure, do that. So, first of all, Emily had a beautiful way of introducing the term of artistic citizenship. But since it is a complex concept, what is artistic, what is citizenship, then put them together and it gets even more complex. It would be very interesting to hear just from each of you, what is your view on the term? And this is not, of course, a test of who has it right, but I guess there's room for a lot of different ways of interpreting this. So maybe, Katja, would it be okay?
Sure.
To start with you?
Yes. Because I'm a teacher, I can't stop myself even in the panel to ask people in the room to think about something. Fair enough. So I would like you to think about, as we talk about change, and what change means to you. We often in society, in our institutions, we talk about we must change, there is change, we must react to change. And quite often we leave it open. What are we really talking about? Do we have some shared goals? Do we make them up as we go? What is it? Am I changing? Are you changing? So artistic citizenship for me is about engaging with change and finding ways to engage with change. And furthermore, in a very holistic way. So I'm never an artist without being a citizen. And because I am who I am with my education and my profession, I'm never a citizen without art.
Yes, I think I've been trying to, simplify this term a little bit in my head, and to me it means putting yourself and your art in a context, a bigger context, where the society is also a part of it. And I think I realized somewhere through my bachelor's that I was living in two worlds. I was living in my personal world that was full of radical politics and feminism and just being a young person. And then I was living in a very conservative world of classical music, where I sort of just accepted that it was conservative and old-fashioned. And to me, I think artistic citizenship is uniting these two worlds, because I realized that at some point I had to do that. I couldn't have these two parallel lives.
I was thinking about this quite a bit last night, and I was thinking that while often you may be able to be a citizen without being an artist, I really wonder if you could be an artist without being a citizen. Because of what an artist means, and a true artist, of course, reflects social culture, creates culture, changes ideas, and I think being a citizen is really an intrinsic part of being an artist of any type. Whereas being a citizen, you don't necessarily have the artistic sensibilities, and maybe I think maybe artists are in a unique position to affect social change and develop community and develop art by the intrinsic elements of being an artist. And I think that's worth exploring. I don't think there should be a separation between citizenship and artistry. I think they're integrated. And I think thinking about how to develop those social elements of being an artist, I think, are also important, and maybe could be more developed than developing the musical or the dramatic or the literal linguistic parts of being an artist. So I think I want to think about that a little bit more.
Yeah, we've really been struggling with the term in my school because it bears a lot of meaning. Two meanings, as you were talking about. One being the artist as citizen, and also the citizen as artist. Maybe so. There's two different aspects. So, but it also implies that artists or art was born outside society, or has been placed outside society. So it's something. So the term, it kind of suggests that this outsideness, it kind of buys that concept of the outsideness. So that's why I think we're struggling with just the term. But anyway, the idea that art, or the fact that art now is renegotiated this year as in society, and is being more and more a societal matter, and that we see that a lot of research shows that art has really certain potential in terms of health and mental health and social inclusion and stuff like that. That's of course a huge potential, and we really need as educators to find out ways to develop programs or education and didactics that kind of meet that potential. How to do that? It's really early days, I think. We've tried some things, and I'm sure you all have been thinking a lot about it. And the other meaning, the citizen as artist, for me is about the fact that the aesthetic is an integral part of being a human being, to express yourself in the aesthetic language. And we kind of have forgotten that in the Western world. With our school system, we kind of, approach the cognitive aspects of being a human being, and some people are relating that to the mental health crisis that our school system kind of our system is not meeting the human being in its whole being. So we're kind of meeting people with a cognitive approach. We're not meeting people with the aesthetic aspects or the tactile aspects or the ethics aspects. So it talks. And it's all. Of course, it also opens a lot of potential for the artist to play a role in terms of, as an expert, the artist as an expert in aesthetic knowledge or aesthetic or the aesthetic way to be a human being. So that's what I'm thinking. But it's early days.
Sure. I would like to follow up on that, because the thing about that you're struggling with the term artistic citizenship. Let me try if I can phrase my question in a way that's understandable. But is it the term, or is it the current situation and the need for there to be a term? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I really buy the concept. So it's not.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
not the
So
concept.
it's not the.
No.
Yeah.
It's the fact. It's kind of naming a certain citizenship to be specifically artistic.
Yeah. So
You know, that a citizenship is artistic. It talks to that outsideness. So in a way, so I would of course, you cannot be an artist without being a citizen. But perhaps it's in this phase of developing these ideas, these concepts, we need to think about it as outside and inside somehow. Because the arts, we have kind of placed the arts outside in the periphery of the society. And there's a core society. And when we ask voters, for instance, in Denmark, what area of politics is the least important if we should choose, they will always point at culture and arts. So the general concept is that it's not central to our society, these aspects. And my argument would be that arts itself and artists ourselves, we have placed ourselves in that peripheral situation, I'm afraid. But so the concept is about getting in and placing arts and culture as a societal matter, and I really buy that. That's what's going on.
So it's moving away from the periphery.
It is,
Yeah.
and even the politicians are aware that in Denmark, the new government, we just got a new government, and it's decided to form a specific council which is going to look at the potential of arts to solve the arts and culture to solve the big societal crisis. Which is, it's really interesting when politicians are kind of giving the artists that kind of tasks.
Definitely. And at the same time, something else that's also interesting is, then if you ask, for instance, what makes it valuable to live in a city, the response is the complete opposite. Then the art scores high, and especially also the business life in the city will start valuing art, because that means that they keep their employees in the cities as well. So it's very interesting that on different levels this is expressed differently.
Yes.
Siri?
Yeah, thank you, Henrik, for the point about us being outsiders. I agree, and I think also a way that we have made ourselves outsiders, especially in the classical world, which is the one I know best, is by putting our art on such a pedestal and viewing it as something very holy and very untouchable. And I think that mindset really makes us distant to the society as a whole. And maybe that's why we now need this term, because we've been moving away instead of growing together with social movement, political movement.
Great points. And I was thinking about like engagement in and with society and activism, because I think artistic citizenship for somebody can mean about having an activist approach in society as an artist. And this interests me a lot because, for example, working with students on certain projects, let's say ensemble work with refugees, for example, in Finland. When I interviewed my students, they often said, I'm not political, but this is what I want to do. I'm not an activist. I don't see myself as an activist, but this is what I want to do. And I think this is one kind of like, going back to your feminist point of view, for example, that you kind of like brought up earlier. It's understanding what forms of activism there can be without kind of stepping outside the arts, like how you can be an activist within the arts without the kind of label of activist, which is fine too. I mean, but if you see this distinction.
Adrian, can I ask, how do you engage with it?
Well, yeah, interesting, the word engagement. I think in America there's been a shift over the last 30 years to move from community outreach, which is what we all did, presenting our art to the masses, where we shifted to engagement, where we're interacting with the masses. But at my school, we're trying very much now to shift to community impact, where through our artistry, we're trying to change lives, not only the lives of the artists themselves, but of the communities that they're interfacing with. So about 5 years ago, we created a Center for Innovation and Community Impact. It's called CC, is the little term. And it's sort of a standalone unit within our school that interfaces with the students in our conservatory program, in our pre-college program, in our dance program, and in our community school. And the idea is that this sort of incubator of ideas creates opportunities for students across our school to either learn new skills or to present their art in unconventional ways, so that they not only express themselves through their artistry, but they really impact lives. We have programs where we work with children of families that are underprivileged, who maybe have trouble in school, and we give them a committed music-intensive program, and we notice that they're better students as a result of that. So it helps them improve at what they do as young children. And we're exploring how better to develop these ideas within this incubator unit to change the lives of the students we're training, but also to change the lives of the communities that our students are going to be living in. So that's been our focus, to shift from outreach to engagement to impact. So still a work in progress. We're really just starting it, but it's for us it's quite an exciting idea.
I think it's interesting that the word innovation is in there as well. Mm-hmm. Can you put a bit of words on that? Why innovation?
It's a big word.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I think where we were coming from with this is so much of what I think classical musicians used to do is they used to do what they were used to be doing, and not really creatively thinking about what they should be doing or how they see themselves living in a community beyond what they do on stage. So this idea of innovation is to have our musicians rethink everything that they do with their art, but with a view to what their future place in society is going to be and how they're going to use their art to affect society. So, I mean, I was think that teaching things like entrepreneurship and innovation are very difficult, because it's hard, right? It should be hard to really make effective change. I think you have to come up with very new ideas and new ways of doing things. Even if you're doing traditional things, you can be very creative in doing traditional things in new ways to have different kinds of impacts on on broader audiences. Maybe not the traditional audience, but everybody. So we try to have our students interface with not just the standard classical audience, but everybody. You know? So that's kind of what we're trying to do.
I guess one statement related to that could be that innovation might happen at intersections. So I see you putting together, a lot of different groups with different perspectives on things, and that might be part of this one. Katja? Yes, speak up. Thank you.
Yes. Adrian, what I was hearing from how you described your thoughts there was about relations and relationships between people and institutions and different communities, and this kind of got me to thinking. I'd like to ask my colleagues here, like, how do you think our current system, let's say, in our institutions, we support the development of relationships? Like, what kind of model of the world do we give our students in terms of like relationality?
That's so important, because so what we're looking at now is we're changing the dynamic between the arts and the public somehow. How we used to send our works of art out into the public, or kind of passive, that kind of traditional approach. And now, what we're talking about now is engagement, impact, and what we're looking at now is the partnership as a method. And what does it mean to do partnerships? And it's not inherent in our traditional didactics, because we're used to train students or artists to create and perform pieces of art in a context where they have the right to define on quite a lot of levels. So going into partnership is also going into negotiation of purpose and definition on all kinds of levels. If you go into a community or going to collaborate with health staff, or it could be in all kinds of different societal situations, we have to train our students to meet that situation with a partnership approach. Interesting, where the purpose of the collaboration is placed between the artist and the other. So because we're trained to carry the purpose into the society and into the world. We are the purpose. So look to be able to establish a purpose outside yourself in a collaboration and partnership with others. That's a specific thing you really have to address in your programs. We're working a lot on that.
Thank you very much for that, because that is the perfect bridge onto, I wouldn't say the next topic, because hopefully it's not that far away for it to be a next topic, but as I said in the title, we're also looking a bit at this world-centered education, and that term comes mainly from Gerd Biesta, who wrote this book that you can come look at if you want to. It's called World-Centered Education. And I thought it was an interesting term to bring into this discussion, because the question could be, is that also artistic citizenship? But before we go into that, I will just quote a little bit of what this world-centered education might mean in his words. So that is that teaching is not understood as a transmission of knowledge and skills, but as an act of redirecting the attention of the students to the world so that they may encounter what the world is asking from them. So the task of the teacher is to call for the student to attend the world. And that also means that it is the world, it's the community that provides the demands of the students, not the teacher anymore. kind of paraphrased, but something along the lines of that. So, I'm very curious to hear what do you think about these statements? Do you see it as being the same, or as artistic citizenship, something else? Siri, please.
I think it's definitely connected, for sure. And something interesting that you and I were talking about earlier, Camilla, is how people live in different worlds. And especially within a conservatory or a university, 20-year-old student and a 60-year-old teacher have very different perspectives on the world. For example, in terms of digitization and just different point of views. So that's really interesting to keep in mind when we talk about worlds. And also, I think these quotes demand a lot of understanding and reflection from the teacher. It doesn't seem an easy task to prepare the students to meet the demands of the world. But it seems like a good ambition. But then, of course, we need really open-minded teaching staff, right? Because if your world is very with a narrow focus on, you know, violin skills, opening the perspective to achieve something like you're describing, I think is a big task.
It sort of raises the question of what should we be doing for the teachers as well. Because it's a heavy lift for a teacher to have all the answers, right? So I think it's a good question to think how institutions can help teachers understand the younger students and the changing needs of the world today, not necessarily their world, but everybody's world, which includes folks older than them, the same age, younger generations. And I don't think we do much for the teacher development in that context. I'd be curious maybe to talk later with folks if they're doing anything for their teachers to develop that understanding of the world that their students have.
Do you have a perspective on that?
Just to add to, before coming here, I asked my students, is there anything you'd like to say? Send a message to this brilliant opportunity to, voice their thoughts, and exactly these things came up, and the students seem to, in a nutshell, they just seem to feel the weight of the world on their shoulders, and we discussed a lot about the kind of what we in our music academy bubble can do, because there are many things we can't do about global trends, but then how do we respond to those things that we could maybe do something about, and it really varies from like the students are saying, please learn what's out there, how the world works now, and open your ears and eyes, and this, I don't know, we probably listen to our students a bit more than we have in the past decades, because it's true that things change, we all know they change faster than ever, and it could be that partnership could also move more towards teacher-student partnership.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I mean, really important question about the teachers, or about the pedagogy or the didactic that we offer, and what we are talking about now, and I'm kind of trying to develop, is perhaps flexibility in the didactic. So it's not so it opens up, and it can contain normativity, like this should be played like this, and this is how it should be. But it could also implement open reflection and questions, analysis on and empathy, and all kind of also ethical questions. How do we, as privilege, certain kind of approach with all these privileges? What's the ethical implications of going out to the community, going out to the socially difficult areas with our art under the arms, and perhaps going into society as an artist, it opens all kinds of ethical questions, and we need to be able to address them as a modern as educators, and we just, I mean, there's nothing. I mean, all my teachers will be able to develop that side of their, but because it's a part of their. I mean, they're really clever and skillful people. So of course, just to open the conversation in the staff.
I think, well, if you have to choose between doing something for your teacher and doing something for the society, for the world, I think the answer is easy, and it's going to be the society or the world. But I think going into discussions like this is also important to maybe ask a critical question: should students or should artists feel that they need to kind of feel, well, I don't know how to phrase this, but the need for making art shouldn't come from the society, right? It should also come from yourself, from your inner creativity. So I think it's really important that we don't try to train our students to look for sort of purposes or needs that is out there and then make their art according, if that makes sense.
It's such an important.
Yeah.
It's such an important part, because when we're talking about that, there will always be the discussion about instrumentalization of the arts, and of course it's an issue, and we should be aware of that. So what we try to do is kind of open the idea of what an artistry might be, just to open that field, move and be inclusive about all kinds of positions, from the traditional I define everything kind of artist to partnership-based artistry, and not talking about replacing one with the other, but looking at this artistic citizenship work as a opening up of possibilities, and not, you know, changing from one to another, because that would be really awful. I mean, really awful.
Just a small reminder again to speak up. Katja.
Excellent points, and there's one English word that I really like that we don't have as such in Finnish, but it's integrity, and somehow it always comes up in these discussions, like what's the artistic integrity there, because there's absolutely no integrity left if we kind of instrumentalize music and without the connection to its kind of meanings and history and relevance and social relevance. If that's left out, we have nothing left. But can I ask another question?
Yes, please.
Brilliant. I've been reading this book recently about social action through music by Jeff Baker. I don't know if and of course the kind of power of music discourse is really dismantled, I think, in a very good way, and so I think as we approach this kind of instrumentalization issue, I'd like to ask you what sort of dangers you currently see in the kind of what music can do in society discourse. Is there anything you'd like to kind of take from there or problematize in any way?
As long as that is inside the legislation, and I mean, and inside the freedom of speech area. I mean, I don't know, really. But if it's based on and inside what we could call ethics, the area of ethics, so for now I can't say.
Siri, do you see a danger?
I mean, not really, but I think for how the politicians view art, that can be dangerous in terms of funding, for example. If the funding moves over to only funding, for example, music therapy and music education and all these uses of music that has a very instrumental purpose, I think that can be certainly a danger.
Yeah, absolutely. Also because it's so, the kind of impact of music, it's so difficult to get research results that show a very clear impact. We can, in some narrow ways, we can show, but really I think we run to a wall if we try to guarantee the funding by relying on that this is what music does. We might run out of evidence. We have to find other ways to kind of like show the meaning of music in society as a social practice or cultural practice, however we want to do it.
Yeah. I'm going to try to see if I can be a bit provoking. It's on purpose. So when we talk about community and engaging with community, there is maybe a danger that we overlook the communities that we're already part of. There might be a tendency to say, so community-focused music is about vulnerable groups. It's about groups on the edge of society, and so on and so forth. And that might be true to some extent, but it's also maybe interesting to say that we were all part of a community when we moved just to work on the same morning, and when we go back in the evening. So what I would like to try to provoke you with a little bit here is, how do we engage with community without at the same time placing ourselves on the definition of what community we're talking about and presenting to the students?
Yep. I mean, exactly. That's exactly why we're struggling with the term, because it kind of leaves us on the outside, going into the communities. So we create our field, and there's a community field. So it's one and the other. So of course, so what we really need to think about is to really placing ourselves in society with certain kind of skills. We have competences in the field of music, in the aesthetic area. So we are experts in expressing ourselves, or we can teach others to express themselves, because we know it's an integral part of being a human being. So we have a really important task, and it's not about lifting other purposes, or not only lifting health purposes or social purposes. So that means that we need also, and I think I hear that from Danish politicians nowadays when they think about the school system they created, that they are aware that we need a broader and more holistic Bildungskoncept, right? A more inclusive idea of what a human being is and how we meet, or how different we are as human beings, and that everybody needs to feel met as a human being. So that's, I think that's why we're struggling with the term, because it keeps us outside the community or the society. So yeah, I don't have any answers as to another term, but so I think you're really right when you I didn't feel that was provoking at all.
I'll try again.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, there's the term that every audience is a local audience, and I think every community is a local community to some extent too. And I think if artists see themselves as going to the community, and there's probably other artists trying to go to the same community, and not thinking that, well, there's an opportunity in that community or an opportunity in this community. And I think, on a very fundamental fiscal level, there's probably a good economic sense to target all communities for sort of a healthy marketplace where artists can thrive throughout their society, while not forgetting that they're still living within their own community also. Like, what are they doing 10 blocks from where they live on a regular basis? Like, can they develop something not only for themselves but for the community through their artistic networks? You don't have to just try to do your artistic work in sort of the easy areas that everybody's trying to do. And I think artists can look around themselves a lot more to develop, and maybe try to develop some innovative ways to think about, well, what can I do for this community that might be different from that community or another community? So again, this question of like, where is the artist's place in society? Not just what is it, but where is the artist's place in society? I think is an interesting question, because if you're going into a community where there's less, then you can probably do more. If you're going into a community where there's more, you're probably going to do less. So I think artists need to think a little bit about their place not only in the community but in the marketplace of artistry and society as well.
I think that leads back to the point from Gabriesta about redirecting attention to the world. I would like to come back a little bit to that, because I think it's on one level very difficult to grasp what that actually means in practice, but it would be interesting to hear your views on that. This redirection, where is it directed from? I could ask, for instance. It should be said though that it is re in brackets. So it might be directing or it might be redirecting, we don't know. But how can you, from within a community of the institution, kind of shed light on what's outside that community? I know it's a very difficult question, but it would be interesting to see what does this directional attention mean to you, if anything. Siri?
I think there's a lot of thinking involved when you're talking about this.
At this point.
But I think, especially within an institution and within curriculum, I think redirecting the thought from what to why is very effective and very sort of easy way to redirect the minds of the students is by always asking them, okay, you can play whatever you want, but why do you want to play it? Why do you want to choose this music over that music? I think that's a very easy way to kind of not change the whole structure of the education, but change something actually really important. And it gives, again, integrity, it gives ownership to the students as well.
And I think that would be training some of the skills that the students will need to go into these other fields of partnerships or engaging themselves and their artistry in other purposes. Because it's developing the reflectory or the analysis or the looking around, you know, the interest in your surrounding as a human being and as a student. So directing your focus, perhaps redirecting it, and well, I think we need a really flexible. We need to be able to have all kinds of perspectives on our own practices, on the situation and the context that we're working in. So that flexibility, it could be, but I think it should be and will be at the core of the training of future artists, because it bears it bears the empowerment, the possibility to create your own possibilities and you create your own future, basically.
Just a thought that came from what was just said. Again, the relationships within the institutions, like before we can expect that we are kind of training students to go out there or to work in different ways or form new partnerships or new ways to create new music. It somehow all needs to be modeled in the institution, right? Like how the teachers collaborate with each other and how it's kind of modeled in the institution, so we don't see it ever as something that we train the musicians here and then they somehow go and do that somewhere else, but it's done in the institution itself. Sorry, this is not very clear.
Yes, that's very clear. You just
in our
showed
own
my second
community.
try.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to try that as a provocation as well. But thank you for stealing that. Siri.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And we know that not all teachers, for example, set a great example of collaboration in basically. But I was briefly studying in LA actually, and I had a wonderful class. You probably know Jasmine Morales.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. It was called Art in Community, and it was an amazing class. A lot of these things were on the agenda, but we actually spent quite a bit of time creating the community of the class in the beginning of the term. I mean, we made a name for the class, we put down some core values of the class and some sort of rules and rituals for how we wanted the class to be and what kind of place we wanted it to be. And that really just kind of made the grounds for looking then up and out into other communities. And of course it's difficult to do that in a huge university or conservatory, but building the internal communities is very important for, as you say, you know, setting an example for the students.
But in fact, Jasmine used to work in our Center for Innovation and Community Impact, so
yeah, she's amazing. You should look her up.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, very cool.
So by now we've kind of gone over artistic citizenship as a headline, at least, talked about world-centered education, and talked about that I'm trying to avoid to say putting the student at the center, because that in the understanding of world-centered education would be the opposite of what we're actually talking about here. But if we were to try to look into the future, which is also what Joanna Kumpula, who's coming tomorrow, will help us do, actually both present and future, then I'm wondering, what does it mean to be world-centered in a world that is maybe both physical but also digital more and more? How do we prepare for that? How do we prepare for students who come in with that as a birthright, that is what they have experienced? How do we prepare for the fact that it may be, this is an assumption of course, but it may be more difficult to build community in our institutions in the same way as we used to? Again, assumption, you're very, very welcome to challenge it. But, so what I'm pretty much asking you is, who do you think the future students are? And what will their world look like? And we have 13 minutes. Oh. I'm aware that there's no answer to this, but it's really interesting to say, if we say the whole person, we need to encompass the whole person. We need to think holistically. We need to act as human beings. All of these words are interesting when you put the digital on top of it. Yeah, sorry for that.
Of course, in my world, in the pop, jazz, and rock field, AI, artificial intelligence, will kind of change everything in a moment. So producing music in the field of pop and rock, and it will be so. So we have some fundamental questions: what kind of skills, what kind of competences, what is the aesthetic expertise that is relevant in that situation where AI and or the whole, I mean, the whole way to make music will change fundamentally. So I don't think it's possible. I would be able, and I'm also of course quite old, but it would not be able for me to imagine the future of the students. But maybe I could imagine what kind of competences and knowledge they would need to maneuver in a changeable world. And because we've been kind of working with that for some years now, because the field that we're dealing with is so versatile and not very traditional. So we're dealing with these music forms as contemporary art forms. So it's, you know, so we're dealing with that every day. That every day we get into the office, the music has changed. So we cannot be normative about you need to do this and know that, and so the ability to reflect on your own competences, knowledge, and abilities, and reflect on your surroundings or the society and what's going on, and your possibilities, and create some concrete solutions in that field. I mean, that's what I see. So, but I think and I hope that aesthetic expertise, musical expertise, will be needed in the future. I mean, we have to believe in it, and I'm sure about it, because as we talked about, it is an integral part of being human being. We have always sung, we have always danced, we have always expressed ourselves through drawings and storytelling and everything. So, I mean, you cannot take that out of the human being.
Yeah, I worry about the pace of change and institutions feeling that they have to somehow keep up with it, because it's impossible. It's going to get harder. And I think I think we can all fill our knowledge gaps very easily by just using our phones and going on Google and finding out what we don't know. Right? We can do that much more easily now than ever before. But I think, to your point, I think focusing on really what your core values are as an artist will become more and more important, because they will define who you are. It will make you different than the next artist, and it's the differences that make us special. It's the differences that change society. It's the differences that are so critical in developing community and society ultimately. I think it's really important to develop those unique qualities in our students, focusing on that rather than focusing on keeping up with change. I think that's just a loser's game. But we can really tangibly focus on the core. Those issues, I think, are much more attainable and achievable.
A little add-on to that I've been thinking about is, if again coming back to this redirecting attention and focusing on the skills we have, the core values, as you say, I'm wondering if we are part of a world where distraction is part of the market and also part of stealing our attention in general. I'm wondering whether one of the things that should be in focus also within higher music education is actually to provide a space of focus, and maybe instead of necessarily becoming increasingly digital, as you say, might be a losing game. You probably have to some extent, but keeping up the pace is maybe impossible. But I'm wondering, with this, can we take it for granted anymore that the coming generations will be able to focus in the same way? Again, assumption, but you know, there is definitely a challenge in terms of a lot of big players fighting for our attention. And I think that raises some interesting questions about, again, what kind of community are we building in our institutions that can maybe safeguard that a little bit as well. That was not a question, I'm aware. I couldn't rephrase it as a question.
This made me think about the 80s. I think there would be other people here as well who've been to school in the 80s, and the very big exaggeration would be to say that we grew up in a sort of atmosphere where it's like, you can be anything, and you just gotta believe in yourself, and you can go high, and you've gotta have your 5-year and your 10-year and 20-year career plans, and that's kind of all I guess is still there, and it might be just my bad career planning that I've never made those plans. but the students have a kind of a different outlook for the future now, and this all makes me think that I think the more we can somehow nurture a sense of interdependence is what we need, because we all know the world's never been secure, but we maybe thought so when the Berlin Wall went down and so forth. But I'm sensing from the students now that there's more and more kind of anxiety about what could happen next, and maybe just like build instead of this individual, you go there kind of thing, this interdependence idea might help.
I really think so too. I really think so too. Because also the way we work with music now is also going towards a more and more individualization. We don't see that many bands being formed now than before. So I mean, we are all artists now. We'll just go and buy a computer and we produce music, and we're sitting there. So it will be another thing for institutions that we're trying to do that, to focus on building communities. So, you know, I think that was a beautiful example that I really think is important. We do not emphasize that, and
really big things going on here now. I think it's funny, I teach really young kids, like 8-9-year-olds, and in Norwegian the word play is spille, it's the word for playing an instrument. And sometimes my students say to me, oh, I love to play, I want to play all day, every day. And I say, oh, fantastic. But they don't mean to play, they mean to game. Like, playing is gaming. So already we have really different perspectives, and that's the new generation. So I think it's impossible to say who they are going to be when they start university. But I think that we're going to have a generation of way more pessimistic youth, or we already do have that. And are they even going to dare to try to become musicians? Probably, I mean, of course, but maybe not in the same way that it was 10 years ago. So I think that's going to be very different. And maybe as in music education, maybe we need to take a step back and maybe not try so hard to give the students exactly what they will need for their working life, because we're not going to have any idea. It's like with entrepreneurship, like when you've done all the work and the subject is launched, then it's already outdated in many cases. And I think most students think that their entrepreneurship courses are outdated already. So maybe it's our time to look at the broader things more than the really specific things of music education.
Any final remarks? Well, thank you so much for participating in these very big questions. I'm a bit sad that I didn't answer them, but were difficult.
Impossible.
Impossible. Well,
Let's see.
Please give a big hand to them.